A boy no older than 9 stood on the frozen grasslands with nothing left to inherit except fear. His father was dead. His family had been abandoned. The people who had once shared their campfires quietly rode away, leaving behind a widow, several hungry children, and a future that seemed impossible to survive. On the Mongolian steppe, abandonment was often a death sentence. There were no villages to seek refuge in, no harvests to gather, and no authority that would come to protect the weak. A family without warriors could disappear within a single winter, erased by starvation, disease, or raiders without leaving a trace. Yet the child left behind was Temujin, a name that would one day become known across nearly every corner of Eurasia. Before he became Genghis Khan, before armies followed his commands, and before empires trembled at his approach, he first had to survive the one enemy no conqueror could defeat with an army alone. The greatest battle of his life began long before he ever held a throne. The question was how a starving outcast managed to endure when almost every force on the steppe seemed determined to destroy him. 12th century Mongolia was not a united nation but a vast world of scattered tribes spread across endless grasslands, deserts, rivers, and mountains. Life depended on horses, livestock, and family alliances. Wealth could disappear overnight after a harsh winter, while political power shifted constantly through marriage, warfare, and personal loyalty. Every tribe competed for survival. Alliances formed quickly and dissolved just as fast. Leaders gained authority not through permanent institutions, but through reputation, military success, and the ability to reward followers. Loyalty was deeply personal, and when a powerful leader died, that loyalty often died with him. Temujin's father, Yasujii, was one such tribal leader. Although not the ruler of all Mongols, he commanded enough influence to secure alliances and protect his family. According to the secret history of the Mongols, the most important surviving account of Temujin's early life, Yasujii even arranged a future marriage between his young son and a girl named Borte, strengthening ties with another clan. Then everything changed. While returning home after leaving Temujin with Borte's family, Yasujii accepted hospitality from a group of Tatars. Recognizing him as an old enemy, they secretly poisoned him. He managed to reach home but died soon afterward, leaving his family without the protection that had kept them alive. His death exposed a brutal reality of steppe politics. Leadership could not simply be inherited by a child. The Taikiad, the powerful clan that had followed Yasujii, quickly abandoned his widow Holun and her children. Rather than supporting the family until Temujin came of age, they simply rode away with the herds that represented survival itself. Few people realize how catastrophic this decision truly was. Livestock meant food, clothing, transportation, and status. Without enough animals, survival became a daily struggle. Holun suddenly found herself responsible for several children with almost no resources in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Instead of surrendering, she refused to let her family disappear. The children gathered wild onions, berries, roots, fish, and small animals. They trapped rodents, collected edible plants, and searched riverbanks for anything that could be eaten. Every season brought new dangers. Summer offered little certainty, while winter threatened death through hunger alone. For Temujin, childhood became an education in endurance rather than privilege. He learned which rivers held fish during different seasons. He learned where wild plants could be found after rain. He learned that every decision could determine whether the family survived another week. But nature was only one threat. The steppe was filled with rival groups who viewed isolated families as easy targets. Raiding was common, and without powerful allies, Temujin's family remained vulnerable to theft or violence at any moment. Survival demanded something even harder than finding food. It required unity. That unity was tested in a way few future emperors ever experienced. Tension grew between Temujin and his older half-brother Bektar. The details remain debated, but the secret history describes growing conflict over authority and resources. In a household where food was desperately scarce, even small disagreements carried enormous consequences. Eventually, Temujin and his full brother Khazar killed Bektar. The episode remains one of the darkest moments of Temujin's youth. Historians continue to debate exactly how it should be understood. Some see it as an act of ruthless ambition. Others argue it reflected the extreme pressures of survival on the steppe, where leadership disputes could quickly become matters of life and death. Whatever the motivation, the event revealed a trait that would later define Temujin's career. When survival and leadership collided, he rarely hesitated. Yet this act did not transform his fortunes. Instead, another disaster soon followed. The Tayikiad eventually captured the young Temujin. Rather than killing him immediately, they reportedly placed a heavy wooden cane around his neck, a form of restraint designed to prevent escape while humiliating the prisoner. For many, this would have been the end. But one night, Temujin escaped. According to the traditional account, he hid in a river while his pursuers searched nearby. A sympathetic man named Sorkinshira eventually sheltered him despite the enormous personal risk. Helping a fugitive could invite severe punishment, yet he and his family chose compassion over fear. This moment carried consequences far beyond a single escape. Temujin never forgot those who helped him when he possessed nothing. Years later, loyalty rather than noble birth became one of the foundations of his leadership. Men who proved themselves through courage and devotion could rise regardless of family background. That principle challenged long-standing traditions across the steppe and attracted followers who had little to gain from the old aristocratic order. Still, his greatest test had not yet arrived. As Temujin grew older, he sought to reclaim the future his father had once planned. He married Borte, fulfilling the alliance arranged during childhood. Their marriage provided more than companionship. It reconnected him with valuable political relationships at a time when every alliance mattered. Then Borte was kidnapped by the Merkit, a rival tribe seeking revenge for an earlier conflict involving Temujin's parents. Once again, everything he had begun rebuilding collapsed. This time, however, Temujin responded differently than before. Instead of facing the crisis alone, he sought allies. He appealed to Togrul, the ruler of the Karite and an old ally of his father, along with his childhood companion Jamuka. Together, their combined forces launched a campaign against the Merkit. The rescue succeeded. Although the alliance would later fracture in dramatic fashion, this operation taught Temujin an essential lesson. Victory came not only through personal courage, but through carefully constructed networks of loyalty and shared interests. It became the blueprint for much of his future success. The starving orphan who had once searched riverbanks for fish had begun learning how coalitions could defeat stronger enemies. That transformation was only beginning. One of the most surprising aspects of Temujin's rise is how little of it depended on inherited privilege. Unlike many rulers throughout history, he did not begin with secure territory, a wealthy kingdom, or an unquestioned royal succession. His greatest resource became people. He rewarded ability instead of ancestry more consistently than many neighboring leaders. Skilled commanders, loyal companions, and capable administrators often advanced because they demonstrated competence rather than belonging to elite families. While aristocratic connections still mattered, merit increasingly shaped opportunity within his growing following. Modern historians see this as one reason his movement expanded so rapidly. There are also important misconceptions about Temujin's early life. Popular retellings sometimes portray him as completely alone after his father's death. In reality, his family remained together under the determined leadership of his mother Holan. Her role was extraordinary. Without her ability to keep her children alive through years of hardship, Temujin might never have reached adulthood. Another misconception is that every detail of his childhood is certain. Much of what we know comes from the secret history of the Mongols, written not long after his lifetime, but blending first-hand traditions with literary storytelling. Persian historians such as Rashid al-Din provide additional information from later generations, yet differences between sources mean some events remain open to interpretation. Archaeology also reminds us how difficult life truly was on the medieval steppe. Excavations across Mongolia reveal highly mobile communities whose wealth centered on livestock rather than permanent cities. Seasonal camps, horse equipment, animal remains, and burial sites confirm a world where mobility determined survival. It was an environment that rewarded adaptability above almost everything else. Perhaps the greatest surprise is that Temujin's harsh childhood was not simply a tragic beginning. It became the foundation of his political philosophy. He understood hunger because he had experienced it. He understood betrayal because his own tribe had abandoned him. He understood loyalty because strangers had risked everything to protect him. Those lessons shaped the empire he eventually built far more deeply than any military victory alone. Long before the title of Genghis Khan echoed across continents, Temujin stood on an empty steppe with no army, no wealth, and almost no reason to believe his future would be different from countless forgotten children who vanished into history. What separated him from those who disappeared was not destiny alone. It was an extraordinary ability to adapt after every setback, to remember every kindness, and to turn every betrayal into a lesson about power. The empire he eventually forged would transform Eurasia through conquest, trade, communication, and unprecedented movement across continents. But none of that was inevitable when his tribe abandoned him beside the windswept grasslands. History often remembers the conqueror who reshaped the world. It rarely remembers the starving boy who first learned that survival itself could be the greatest victory of all.